We were sitting at the long cedar table Emily's father had refinished with his own hands. She reminded me of that every time we visited. "You can't buy this kind of work," she'd say. But the whole house felt bought. Not in money, but in pretense. The curated smiles. The seasonal throw pillows. The way they all paused before saying grace. Not to pray, but to check who was watching. Emily's sister was already on her second glass of Chardonnay. Her mother was complaining about her tennis elbow again. Her brother-in-law was explaining how Bitcoin was still the smartest play if you just held on long enough. Justin sat across from me, elbows on the table, chewing too loud, texting under the tablecloth like no one could see. He'd come home from college with a new swagger. The kind of boy who thought cruelty was cleverness. Emily had placed me at the end of the table, always the end, as if proximity might confuse the bloodlines, as if closeness might imply something that wasn't true. I noticed those things more often lately, how she positioned me in photos, how she used we when it came to bills and I when it came to decisions. We were halfway through the main course when it happened. I had just leaned slightly to grab the salt. That's when Justin reached behind me, yanked the back legs of my chair a few inches off the ground, and said, loud enough to slice through the conversations, loud enough to turn heads, "You don't belong here." No hesitation. No smirk to play it off as a joke. Just raw dismissal. A silence fell, like a glass dropped in church. I looked at him. He looked right back, unflinching. He wanted this. The moment, the eyes, the power. Emily didn't react, didn't blink, didn't touch my arm, didn't clear her throat, didn't say a word. She just kept cutting into her salmon, slowly, like nothing had been said. The others glanced away. Someone chuckled nervously. Her father sipped his drink. A ripple of discomfort passed, then faded. The show went on. I straightened the chair, sat still. My chest rose once, then fell. And I said nothing. They had no idea who I was. No idea what I had endured to sit quietly at that table. No idea of the years I gave to this family, how I paid for Justin's SAT prep, his car, the dentist who straightened his teeth. No idea that I was a retired senior officer in the U.S. Air Force. 22 years. Overseas postings, classified assignments, funerals of men whose names I can't forget. I had been called sir more times than I can count. But at that table, I was nothing. Just a man with a different last name, holding a fork and pretending to be family. After dinner, I didn't speak on the ride home. Emily didn't ask why. She didn't offer comfort. We moved through the night like strangers in shared silence. The tires hummed. The heater clicked. Justin had already driven back to his apartment. When we got home, she went to bed early. "Tired," she said. No kiss goodnight. Just a closed door. I sat at the kitchen island. Same spot where I used to help Justin with his math homework when he was 12 and couldn't figure out fractions. The same place I stood the day I signed the loan papers for his first semester. I remembered the way he'd smiled when I gave him his dorm key. Called me Mike. Never Dad. But he said it like I mattered. I pulled out my laptop. I didn't rage. I didn't type with fury. I moved slowly, deliberately. Bank accounts, recurring transfers, auto payments, tuition, canceled, car insurance, suspended, health coverage, removed, rent for his campus apartment, terminated. It took 12 minutes to erase myself from his life. Not out of revenge, out of release. The next morning I packed a duffel bag, one change of clothes, a leather-bound notebook, the watch I wore when I deployed for the last time. I left my wedding ring on the nightstand. The house was still. Emily didn't stir when I closed the door. By noon, I was driving west, past Salem, past the logging towns until I hit the coast. I rented a room above an old bait shop in Depot Bay. It smelled like salt and silence. The woman who ran it didn't ask questions. The fog rolled in that night like a secret. I hadn't felt peace in years. No chores, no expectations, no eyes measuring whether I was enough. Just wind and water, the sound of gulls, and silence that didn't feel like punishment. The next morning, I walked to the small government office 2 blocks down and filed the paperwork. It had been sitting on my desk for months. Justin's selective service deferral, tied to my veteran status, had quietly expired. He never knew it was me who filed the exemption to begin with. He just assumed it was luck. His mother never told him. She didn't want to give me that credit. I revoked the exemption, signed my name, walked out. 3 days later, Justin received a letter in the mail. Not from me. From the United States Department of Defense. Mandatory enlistment. 12 months. Basic training report date. Immediate. Let him learn something about belonging. Let him understand what it means to wake up at 5:30 a.m. To clean latrines, to be shouted at by men who don't care who your stepfather was. To sleep in a bunk, eat what you're given, and carry weight you didn't choose. Let him understand what it costs to tell a man he's nothing, and still expect everything. He took my money, my patience, my years. Now he would give the country his time. And Emily? She would have to explain that dinner. By noon the next day, my phone began to buzz. At first, it was just Emily. 1 missed call. Then 3. Then a string of messages. Where are you? We need to talk. What's going on with Justin's school? I didn't answer. I watched the screen flash on the nightstand of the little room I'd rented above the bait shop. Cheap pine floors, walls thin enough to hear the seagulls fight over trash in the alley. But for once, the chaos wasn't mine. An hour later, her mother started calling. Then her sister. Then Justin. His first message was angry. WTF did you do? Then another. They're saying tuition bounced. You said you'd handle it. What is this? And then, hours later, his tone changed. Please call me. Please. I need to know what's happening. I powered the phone off. They had built this tower. I just stepped away from the foundation. Let it lean. Let it crack. When you've spent your life in command, you learn restraint. The value of silence. You don't shout orders unless the silence fails. Mine hadn't failed me yet. By nightfall, I knew Emily had driven to my office. A call came from the building supervisor. Polite but puzzled. Sir, your wife is here asking about your schedule. Should I tell her you're on leave? I told him to say I'd stepped away for health reasons. That was true enough. I spent that evening watching the sea tear itself apart on the rocks. In the city, no one hears a man fall apart. The noise hides it. But out here, the silence makes it sacred. Every breath I took felt like one I hadn't earned in years. 3 days passed. On the 4th, I ran into a neighbor, Mrs. Anders. Used to live 2 houses down from us. We crossed paths at the corner market. She blinked when she saw me. Michael! I nodded. Picked up a carton of black coffee. I hadn't shaved. I hadn't slept much either. But I was clear. They said you left, she said, voice low. Emily's been talking to everyone. Says you just vanished. Said you cut off support. Walked out. I didn't explain. I just met her eyes and said, I gave them a choice. They made it. She hesitated. Justin got a draft notice. I know, I said. She didn't ask how, but her face changed, like she'd connected something unspoken. Then she muttered, more to herself than to me. Well, that boy always had a mouth on him. Heard him once in the pharmacy, shouting into his phone. Said nobody gives a damn about him. Said he doesn't need anyone. She shrugged, almost bitter. Well, now he's got the army. They'll give him what he's looking for. Her eyes lingered on mine. There was no pity there, just understanding. I walked back to my car in the wind. The grocery bag in my hand felt heavier than it should have. Back in my room, I opened the phone again. The messages had multiplied. Justin had gone from rage to pleading. Please, I didn't mean it like that. I was drunk. I was trying to make a joke. I don't belong there either. Don't do this. One voicemail stood out, his voice cracking. Michael, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. They said I have to report next week. I don't even own boots. Please, just talk to me. I deleted it. This wasn't punishment. It was education. He wanted to stand on his own name. He'd learn what it meant to carry it without someone else's spine holding him upright. Emily tried a different approach. I didn't know he'd say that. You know, I didn't mean for this to happen. Please come back so we can talk. Talk? For 6 years I'd been the man who made her life easier. Fixed the sink. Paid the taxes. Stayed quiet when Justin rolled his eyes. Took the blame when discipline broke down. I thought that's what love looked like. A man who absorbs damage so others don't feel it. But she had been quiet too long. She had let her son humiliate me at a dinner table built on my checks and my effort. And when the moment came, when I was yanked back in my chair like a stranger who'd wandered into a private celebration, she looked away. Now she wanted a conversation. But some silences weigh more than words. And hers had crushed everything. That weekend, I drove inland to a small county fair. I bought a ticket to a rodeo show. Sat on a bench among strangers and let the dust and the noise fill the space where guilt tried to live. No one there knew me. No one looked at me like a wallet or a traitor or a shadow of another man. A boy rode a bull for 7 seconds. His father cheered like he'd won a war. I watched the boy stumble off, laughing. The father caught him in a hug. No words, just arms. It wasn't blood that made it real. It was presence, respect, connection earned. Later that night, back at the motel, a message came in from Emily's sister. It wasn't kind. You think you're a hero now? Some tough love martyr? You've humiliated your wife. You've destroyed Justin. He was a kid. You're supposed to be the adult. I stared at that sentence. He was a kid. You're supposed to be the adult. And I was, for years. But being an adult doesn't mean being a doormat. It doesn't mean funding the arrogance of a boy who won't look you in the eye, then cries when the world treats him like a man. It means drawing lines, upholding boundaries, teaching lessons when love fails to reach them. I didn't reply. The next morning, I went for a run down the coast. It was raining, cold. My knees ached, but I kept moving. I thought of every early morning I'd spent driving Justin to practice, every forgotten birthday card, every snide remark about my real dad wouldn't do it this way. I thought of the weekend he broke the fence after a party, and how I spent Sunday fixing it, alone, while he slept off the hangover. I thought of the time he told Emily I was too intense, said I gave off Warvet vibes, and that it made his friends uncomfortable. I had told myself all those years that fatherhood wasn't about gratitude, that you did it because it was right. But right doesn't mean endless. Right doesn't mean allowing yourself to be erased one sigh at a time. And now he would wake up every day at 0500, not to the smell of eggs and quiet forgiveness, but to the bark of a drill sergeant who didn't care about his GPA or his excuses. Now he'd learn discipline in boots, not from a man he thought he could humiliate without consequence. That week, the online neighborhood forum lit up. Someone posted a thread. Did anyone else hear about Michael leaving? Dozens of replies. Some sympathetic. Some accusing. One said I'd gone off the grid. Another said I'd left Emily in emotional ruin. One wrote, "Never trusted that guy. Always too quiet." I read every comment, then closed the tab. Let them talk. Let them guess. I didn't need to explain myself to people who watched me mow the lawn for 6 years and never once asked how I was doing. Respect, when withheld long enough, becomes poison. And I'd been drinking it in sips for years. Now I was sober. By the end of the week, Justin's orders had been confirmed. He would report to Fort Jackson in South Carolina. 12 weeks of basic. 1 year of mandatory service unless he washed out. Emily left me a voicemail that night. Her voice was brittle. I tried to stop it. I called every office I could. They said the paperwork was airtight. They said unless he had a medical exemption or enrolled full-time again, there's no appeal. They said someone had filed it perfectly. I knew it was you. I just don't know why you'd go that far. Why you'd let him suffer like this. He's scared. I'm scared. Suffer? She didn't know what suffering was. She didn't know what it felt like to sit in silence while your presence was carved out of your own house, inch by inch. She didn't know what it was like to pay for a boy's future while he spit your name on the floor like a stain. I didn't return the call. That night, I wrote one line in the leather-bound notebook I'd brought with me. If he's old enough to insult a man like one, He's old enough to be treated like one. And I slept better than I had in years. It was the 7th morning since I'd left when the phone rang again. I almost didn't answer, but the number was unfamiliar. Local. I pressed the call button, expecting a business office or a misdialed contractor. Instead, a clipped voice came through. "This is Mrs. Dwyer, Veterans Services. Are you Mr. Michael Granger?" I stood by the window, overlooking the misted coastline. "I am." A pause. The kind that precedes something messy. "I've been contacted by Emily Granger, your wife." I said nothing. "She's filed a complaint alleging abandonment, intentional withdrawal of financial support, and indirect emotional abuse toward her son, Justin Granger." There it was. The bullet, midair. My silence held. "I'm just here to verify the claim and give you a chance to respond," she continued, professionally. "Since the Selective Service Exemption was originally filed through your military credentials, it triggered a secondary review." I nodded, though she couldn't see it. My voice came low. "I'm not sure what she told you, but I have 3 years of digital records. Transfers, payments, contracts, receipts. I can show you a detailed financial trail, tens of thousands of dollars, for Justin's tuition, housing, vehicle, and health care." Another pause. "She also submitted a voice message," I said. "You recorded her?" she asked, neutral but cautious. "She knew," I replied. "I keep a log. You serve long enough, you learn to document everything." Played it for her. Emily's voice, sharp, frayed. "You're just a wallet, Michael. That's all you've ever been to him. You think he respects you? He doesn't. He just needs you to shut up and keep paying." When it ended, I could hear the weight shift on the other end of the line. A breath pulled in. "That's more than enough," she said. "I'm closing the review. No action required. You're fully in the clear." I thanked her. We hung up. Should have felt like victory, but it didn't. It felt like frost biting the fingertips. A numbness that meant I wasn't healing, just hardening. Later that afternoon, I sat at the edge of the dock behind the bait shop. Seagulls screamed at the sky like it owed them something. The wind rolled in fast and bitter, pushing the clouds down until the horizon vanished into gray. I remembered a night 3 years earlier. Justin had called me at 1:43 a.m. Panicked. His car had died on a remote road outside Eugene. No tow service answered. No friends picked up. I'd driven 3 hours through fog and sleet to get to him. Fixed the battery. Drove behind him all the way home. Didn't ask for thanks. Didn't mention the meeting I missed the next day. He'd been silent the whole ride. Not out of shame, just assumption. He believed I would come. That's what scared me most now. Not his cruelty, but his certainty that I'd always be there to receive it. That certainty was gone now. 2 days later, a manila envelope arrived in the motel's mailbox. Return address, Department of Defense. Draft board. Inside, a confirmation. Mandatory enlistment confirmed. Family objections denied. No valid cause for exemption. There it was. The verdict. No more shielding. No more reroutes. No more rescues. He was officially enlisted. Orders locked. Training assigned. Discharge only by completion or dishonor. That evening, my phone rang again. Justin. I stared at the name. Let it ring. Voicemail picked up. Then his voice. This time not furious. Not rehearsed. Just terrified. "They're serious. I didn't think. I thought Mom could stop it, or maybe you'd just come back. I thought you'd be mad for a few days. But..." A pause. Shaky breath. "I don't know what to do. I don't know how to pack. They sent a checklist, but it's all boots and socks and razors. I've never shaved with a razor. I've never fired a gun. I've never..." Silence again. "I said a stupid thing. I didn't mean it. Please, Michael. Just tell them something. Tell them it's a mistake." He didn't say, "Dad." Not even now. I saved the voicemail. I didn't respond. That night I dreamed of barracks. Cold steel beds. Mud in the teeth. I dreamed of drills that never ended. Voices that barked orders louder than shame. And somewhere in that storm, A boy stood looking for someone to explain why the world suddenly had edges. Let him find his footing now. The next morning, the motel owner, Mrs. Hall, stopped me as I came down the stairs. She was folding towels in the lobby, her fingers thin and knotted with arthritis. "Heard you had company coming soon," she said, a strange glint in her eye. "Company? Your boy," she said. "Word travels. Neighbor down the road saw Emily at the courthouse, crying. Said the judge told her nothing could be undone. No parental override." I didn't reply. She handed me a receipt for the week's stay. "Good for you," she added. "Sometimes the only way they learn is when you leave the room." I paid in cash. Outside, the ocean thrashed against the rocks like it had something to prove. The phone stayed quiet that day, until it didn't. Another call, this time from a blocked number. I picked up. The voice on the other end wasn't Emily's. It was Todd, Justin's biological father. He sounded tired, older than I remembered. He'd never shown up for birthdays, never covered tuition, never fixed the broken dryer. Now he was calling me. "Michael," he said, "I heard what's happening. I got a call from Emily. Said things got out of hand." I waited. I don't think the army's the right place for Justin. He's sensitive. He's not built for that kind of discipline. Maybe we can work something out. Maybe you could reverse it? I almost laughed. "You think I have that kind of pull?" He hesitated. "You always had control of this stuff. You filed the first exemption, right?" "Yes," I said. "And I just rescinded it." "Why would you do that?" His voice cracked slightly. "He's just a kid." "No," I said. "He was a kid when I paid his way through school, when I taught him to drive, when I spent nights alone at the table making sure the lights stayed on. But he grew up the second he opened his mouth at that dinner table. The second he told me I didn't belong." "He didn't mean it," Todd whispered. "Then he shouldn't have said it." Silence stretched out between us. Then, "Emily's blaming me now. Says I should have helped more. Says if I'd stepped up, you wouldn't have had to do all of it." "That's true," I said. "Look," Todd sighed. "He's scared. He's not built for this." "He's built for it now," I replied. Then I hung up. No ceremony. No anger. Just truth. That was the last call I took that week. The motel emptied out on Sunday. A fishing tour canceled due to a storm. I had the place to myself. Quiet halls. The smell of bleach and salt. Time moved like thick molasses, slow, inevitable. That night, I sat by the fire in the common room. Alone. The flames snapped and hissed. I poured myself a glass of bourbon and stared at a photograph on the mantel. A younger couple. Smiling. Holding a child. The frame had dust on it. I thought of the photo in my duffel. Me, Emily, Justin 6 Christmases ago. The one he signed on the back in blocky handwriting. "Thanks for being with us, Dad." I hadn't looked at it since I left. But I remembered every word. That boy was gone now. Replaced by a young man who'd traded gratitude for pride. Who'd chosen blood over sacrifice. Who'd spoken a sentence that couldn't be unsaid. I leaned back in the chair. Bourbon warm in my chest. A sentence can be forgiven, but it can't be unheard. And when silence follows, it becomes law. A week passed. The mornings came slower on the coast. The sky didn't open all at once. It leaked into the day. The gulls screeched above like they were cursing someone in particular. I kept to my rituals. Black coffee, the dock at sunrise, a long silence where my name used to live. I hadn't heard from Emily in 4 days. Not since the last voicemail. Not since Todd called and failed to carry the weight he'd abandoned years ago. Justin had already reported to the induction center. I knew because the system updated his status. 1 click. No fanfare. Enlisted. In transit to Fort Jackson. Just a line in a record. 12 years of me, reduced to a line he couldn't escape. That afternoon, I sat by the fireplace in my room. The ocean's breath rattling the window. The place smelled of salt and burnt pine. The landlord had left me firewood and a chipped iron poker that reminded me of old base housing. Cold, functional, forgotten. I unfolded the photo again. The one taken 6 Christmases ago. A cheap Canon printout, colors already fading. I was kneeling, one arm around Emily's waist. Justin had his arms flung wide like a kid showing off the world. Wrapping paper everywhere. That year I built his bike from scratch in the garage. Wrapped it with a bow, pretended Santa brought it because Emily said he still wanted to believe. On the back, in crooked handwriting. "Thanks for being with us, Dad." I ran my thumb along the paper. The ink had smudged from when I'd folded it the night I left. I should have thrown it away. But I didn't. Because somewhere in those letters a different boy had lived. One who saw me, maybe just for a moment, as more than a wallet or a placeholder. I set the photo down on the table. Exhaled. Spoke aloud, not to the room, but to the version of myself still sitting at that dinner table, humiliated, erased. Now it's without me. No drama. Just truth. Let them understand what absence feels like. Not the kind that storms out, slams doors, leaves in fury, but the kind that moves silently. The kind that unplugs the cables, empties the bank accounts, and stops answering the phone. The kind of absence that changes a family in the way an earthquake changes a coastline. Quiet at first, then irreversible. The next morning, the motel clerk knocked gently on my door. "Package for you," she said, her eyes hesitant. Came priority. I took the envelope. No return address. Just my name handwritten. Inside, a single letter. Folded once. Inked by someone trying not to shake. Justin's handwriting. No greeting. No "Dear Michael." Just a beginning. "I know you probably won't read this. I understand now. Not everything. But enough. Basic training is different. No one cares who you are. No one cares about your plans. There's just the next order, the next bruise, the next name they scream at you. Last night, my bunkmate said he joined because his dad served. He said his dad earned his respect. And I realized I had that. I had someone who did everything, who carried me when I didn't even know I was being carried. And I spat on it. I said words I can't take back. "I hurt you. I know that now. I don't expect forgiveness. But I needed you to know I see it. I see you now." There was no signature. No closing line. Just silence after truth. I folded it once, pressed it flat, placed it inside the notebook where I kept my receipts. It didn't fix anything. But it meant something. And maybe that's all we ever get in the end. Not repair, not reunion, just recognition. I left the motel 3 days later. Paid in full. Tipped generously. I told Mrs. Hall thank you for the silence. She said nothing back. That, too, was a kind of respect. I didn't go back to the house. I didn't call Emily. Didn't ask what they told the neighbors. Didn't ask if she cried when he left for the bus. She had made her silence clear at the table. That was the verdict. Let her live with it. Let her explain it to the empty chair, the unpaid bills, the echo of a man who once made things easier. Let her explain to herself how she raised a boy who thought a single sentence could erase a father. Because that's what I had been. Not by blood, but by every mile driven. Every night I stayed. Every choice I made that put his life ahead of mine. I gave them years. They gave me a chair yanked from behind and a sentence no one denied. So I ask you now, you who read this, you who've stood in doorways with your hands full and your name forgotten, was I wrong? Was I wrong to walk away? Was I cruel to let the bill come due? Or was I simply the only one willing to hold them accountable for the house they burned while I stood quietly in the smoke? Sometimes the best thing a man can give a family is not his presence, but his absence. Fully chosen. Fully final. They'll understand that. Eventually.